Open world survival craft. It is a tired, played out, overused and over-flooded term that we see everywhere. And while most of them have an understanding of what's required of them, basic necessities and gameplay loop requirements, for the most part, it's kind of a floodplain of slop shovelware for as far as the eye can see. So many of them reaching for the high-profile Valheim-like status. Abiotic Factor has been a strong contender ever since it came out into early access in an almost feature-complete state, and I loved it and looked at it at the time. So with its 1.0 release dropping in the past week, I think I can happily and confidently say that there may well be a new gold standard in town. Welcome back to the channel, team. I am the Scarlet Seeker, and this is my review for Abiotic Factor. Everything that's radiation, put in that crate.
There must be water here somewhere.
Did you just fucking call me back halfway?
You should have waited for a second.
You fucking cunt. I can't hear anything. What the fuck's going on?
He's dead. What? I'm out of here. I'm going.
Oh, Mix, cut loose. Let's go.
Watch this.
Get in. God, Nemo, no brakes on the fucking Nemo train. I've been sitting on this in pre-release for a week or two, and I did do, well, we call it a review because I put a lot of time into it, but in the very early access launch build, where it was magic at that time, unusually so for early access, we did a review then, so I suppose this serves as a 1.0 update review. I'm going to drop this video now because this is one of those games that is best played multiplayer. It's 1 to 6 players, and I've kind of, in my time with it leading up to the release, and now we're starting to get away from the release, so we're losing that window where it's important to get the video out to inform. I've had a tricky time getting a stack together consistently. Who would believe that we're all adults with lives, right? Not everyone's a bloody full-time YouTuber like me, and I'm sympathetic. But I've tried running 2 different stacks, and one of the groups we've made a lot of progress. We've got a lot further than I did when I did the initial review. We're several biomes deep, fighting bosses and stuff. Anyway, I don't want to give any of that away, but I just thought I would lead with the fact that there is a lot of content here. I haven't seen it all, and I doubt that I would in a timely manner. So let's just get it out and put it on your radar in case you're not aware of it. For credentials, Steam tells me I've played 41 hours of it, and it's got the thing saying 24.4 hours in the last 2 weeks. So there you go. I've pretty much played time and time again the recent release build. And what do I think of it? Abiotic Factor is absolutely excellent. You could play it single player in the same way that, you could play Valheim single player. I feel like that answers the question and shuts the book there. If you have the temperament for doing what is clearly a multiplayer co-op kind of colony base builder type experience, if you can stomach it or even prefer it, there will be people that just enjoy their idiosyncratic personal space, right? I want to build this base this way, that sort of thing. Then yeah, you could absolutely play it single player, but it shines when you've got a full stack, right? It doesn't have to be 6. It all scales difficulty wise. So if it's only a couple of you, it will work. But 6 is actually the absolute sweet spot where it mixes organization in with frenetic all over the place trying to herd cats, and it's a great combo. You should see the base that we've got. You could probably write a paper on people and territorial behavior, and everyone's carving out their own little corner of territory, but there's a bed over here, and I've got my executive suite where I've been collecting all the televisions that I find, and I put them on, and it drives everyone nuts. And there was a territorial dispute which ended in people shitting on each other's beds for a while there. Anyway, it's an excellent game, but obviously shaped by the group that you play with as well. Again, I mentioned Valheim. It has a lot in common with those games. I joke about Rust and having like a mum that's home to look after the nest. I think even even though I haven't played Rust in a while, but as soon as you start playing with a group in these sort of games, people start to gravitate towards roles, and Abiotic Factor is no different, right? You'll have dudes that are going out exploring, the more combat-based guys. And then you have, like, yes, the mum that stays home. One of our guys was just in the kitchen pretty much full time. The kitchen was her domain, in which case, so she wasn't beating the allegations, but she chose her poison. And the understanding was, you know, you could take from the fridge and you'd put things in the fridge, but don't fuck with any of that zen. She had it under control. But same, you know, likewise, a couple of us were sort of filling the gaps. I was flexing between both and kind of mass crafting. The crafting system in this game is absolutely excellent and inspired. The way that you come up with recipes is a step again above, you know, your Valheims and that sort of thing. So it does have the idea that, I don't know, let's say I craft a bandage and you don't know the recipe for a bandage. I can actually press a share button so it shares to people near me. So pretty straightforward. But again, if you loot a box of inventory and the bandages in there, you will learn the recipe automatically. So it's got all that quality of life stuff. I do recall that when I looked at this the first time around, I mentioned that there wasn't like shared draw from inventory for workbenches, which is kind of a quality of life that is expected. And it would seem, and people corrected me on the video, and I guess I just didn't get around to seeing it because, you know, everyone has their place. You only cover so much. But you can actually upgrade the workbenches in multiple directions, but the must-have upgrade, generally speaking, is detect nearby boxes so as to craft recipes. But yeah, you have this sort of little brain blueprint overlay, and it'll have different slots for different item types, you know. Battery combined with human poo. What does that make? Probably nothing, right? But you slot them in these little things, and it goes with a pre-existing blueprint. So you have the blueprint of the bandage, for example, but you don't know what it is. So you have to slot the little brain things until the penny drops for your scientists. It's cool. It's another step of little fiddly mini game that adds a bit of depth, and it helps to the overall world setting, which is to say you are kind of all mad scientists. In many ways, this is homage or a what-if scenario of Half-Life 1. From the ground up, right? So not just the world setting of being scientists in this institution where, you know, you've had a Black Mesa event. There are monsters, they're invading from a dimension, there are portals, it's very much like Zen. So in many ways, it's very one-to-one with Half-Life, but you can see it looking at it, the art direction and the choice of how they've done the textures and just everything in general. It is absolute homage to Half-Life 1. But again, seen less through the perspective of a Rambo main character, first-person shooter Gordon Freeman, and more just these scientists that were stuck in the scenario. You know, they're the scientists that you go past through Half-Life 1 that are like, oh, I'll just wait for you to get help, you know, and they're probably dead. Well, maybe they did this. Maybe they all teamed up together and made a terrible ramshackle base and came up with mad ideas for batteries and using magazines as armor and turning filing cabinets into chess pieces, and it's an absolute trip, and it doesn't get much more fun than this. It's still sitting on overwhelmingly positive, and it's pretty much been on that ever since it got first revealed in early access. And like I said, I covered it day and date, and it was excellent then, it's excellent now. The main thing that it really has on something like your Valheims, I keep using that as an example, but to me, I think that is the contemporary cornerstone that most people will understand and relate to. But you can pick your poison and fill it in because there's a million of these bloody type survival craft games. But know that this is one of the 1% that stands apart. And the really big thing is because it has that underlying narrative impetus. It's still fairly light, and it's kind of told piecemeal in, Dark Souls-like manner, being that you'll find little computers with email chains talking about this. Well, I actually don't even really want to talk about it, but yeah, the idea of this other dimension and monsters coming through, but there's a bit more to it, and again, I don't want to give it away. But yeah, that's the main thing that it has that most of these games do not have. A lot of them try to lean pretty heavy on the, hey, here are the tools, and You're the creative. You make up your own fun in the sandbox. Here's just, some tools and a rule set, which I don't think is really good enough for the most part. If you give me the paint and the easel and tell me to paint my own painting, are you the artist or are you just the manufacturer of artistic tools? I think some games these days, especially in the more sandbox creative space, run that line, and I think it's a bit cheeky. You should have some sort of directed vision to put on the table. Anyway, that's what this absolutely has. So it's really good fun. Everything's readability is incredibly clean and easy to interact with. When you start your character, you can lay them out sort of like a Project Zomboid. You pick bonuses and negatives. I picked every negative I possibly could just for memes. The main side effect of that, honestly, is that my guy gets tired a lot and he needs to shit almost constantly. So yeah, you've got those survival mechanics. One of them is having to poo, and then you have a poo mini game in the toilet, so that's great. Oh my god, I just remembered that. Yeah, we've basically recently come up with the recipe for a portable, basically a placeable toilet. So we're not at the mercy of having to go to the toilet blocks because it's all inside the science facility, which is fascinating because you move through the different biomes into like manufacturing and chemical plant areas and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, we basically stacked this toilet throne in the middle of the base on top of a bunch of boxes. So if you need to shit, you got to do it in front of everyone. Often you'll get a crowd cheering you on, which is, I suppose that's one way to bond with the boys and boyettes. But yeah, things like eating and drinking, and there is a health system. There's also, actually fairly robust stuff like you can break your legs and need to splint them. So there's almost a Tarkov-like medical system to it. And your health heals over time. To speed that up, for example, there's a combination called Coalescenc, where you have essentially max hunger filled, max thirst, and max sleep. So you're in a Coalescenc place, right? You're essentially doing well, and what that in turn adds like a 10% healing speed modifier to your dude's ability to heal up. So it has a lot of these systems that not just are expected and aren't just standard, but go above and beyond. So this aesthetic, this old school 90s art style, could be argued maybe cutesy or even put some people off, but there's a lot going on under the hood. It's a very complicated game. There's all sorts of different like build sets and combinations and different weapons, and we all have different dudes running different gears. Like I'm actually running like a two-handed heavy build. It took a long time to do because I had to level my strength up. You have a huge wall of stats, and being able to wield a weapon efficiently or to do any damage at all, you have to make sure you pass the stat level. So it has those RPG, I'm comparing it to Souls, but that's a Souls thing, right? If you try and wield a two-handed weapon, you don't have the strength stat for it, you're not going to do any damage, really. But we've got one other dude that's obsessed with darts. Every pen that you can find in every office gets turned into a dart with him, and you'll find a body occasionally with 20 darts sticking out of it, and you know that he'd been there. Someone's on crossbows, bow and arrows. We built like a grinder gun. That was pretty cool. Someone's got a net gun, so we'll be versing like bloody military marines, They think they've got an easy job. They're coming in to do a cleanup of innocent scientists, and all these wankers coming out wearing ramshackle raggy doll armor, come out shooting nets on them and clogging them up and beating them to death with sticks made out of thermal pipe. Oh man. It's an absolute trip, but it's so well realized that you'll be immersed, right? You'll forget that it's kind of a bit absurd. And then you couple this all on top of the fact that it's essentially got some really good Metroidvania mechanics. Like we're still set up in this main base foyer. We've contemplated moving it, but we've got a monorail system running. We've unlocked multiple forklifts, and there's a lot of shortcuts that you can double back through. That it's not really an inconvenience having our base essentially in the starting area. So we're kind of just running back and forth. Anyway, I'm gushing. The game is clearly excellent, and I'm a big fan, and in truth, I don't have a lot to add since the time I looked at it in 1.0. It was excellent then, it's excellent now, it survived early access, it added way more content, absolutely playable solo if you are so inclined, but again, check your stomach and your attitude for that first, because personally, the grind would wear me down, trying to manage all parts of a base and, kitchen and gear and all that. But it also, at the same time, it is something that you could probably chip at over the course of, 50 hours on your own and come up with your own little system. But highly recommend you try and get a stack together and play it, and you might end up in a situation like me where you can only play every couple of weekends when you manage to get everyone together, and by the end of 12 months you might clock it, but it'll be worth it. It's one of the coolest multiplayer experiences I've had in recent years. Anyway, team, Abiotic Factor. Oh my god, I forgot all my normal pattern. I'm all over the place at the moment. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do subscribe. I've been asking people to do that recently and we've had explosive subs. It's been excellent. And I'll also put links down below if you want to become a channel member to throw me patronage. Again, I'm not interested in some sort of deal or being bought or making t-shirts, but if you do want to give me a bit of money to support what I do, no strings attached, links are there. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. Team, I might just leave it there for the time being and I'll catch you guys on the next one.